And after 57 years, I decided to return back home to Iowa Falls and got a big house with a large basement and transformed that into a museum. Uh, Actually, I, collecting these items that I have, well, I survived a raid actually. Some members of the Historical Society burst into my home, put a bayonet to my chest and ordered me to, they emptied my house. No. What I let them bring up here, I still have a lot of items back in my basement. And of course, each artifact has a story on its own, and some of the stories are fantastic. But I collected these items not aggressively, just over a lot of years, because relics can't be found anymore. You go to the battle sites, and I've been to, well, I'll talk about that, but you can't find any relics or artifacts unless you use the metal detectors, you're diving into the ocean after items, or they just aren't available. A lot of them were destroyed after the war. Even a short time after the war, artifacts were gone. But I've managed to come by some really good ones through friends that I either were donated to me or I purchased them. I even went to a pawn shop and found some great items at antique stores, and dealers who deal in artifacts or World War II memorabilia. But I received a lot of items from 8th Air Force veterans who I interviewed for a book that I wrote, and I'll get into that a little later. But I think all this started when I was 4 years old, riding my tricycle around a big furnace in our basement and heard about Pearl Harbor being attacked.
December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
My dad got a job working in a munitions plant at Middletown, Iowa, near Burlington, and we lived in New London. And I remember going through the war years just like they were yesterday. If you asked me today what I knew about yesterday, I wouldn't know. But those years were so impressive. Going through rationing, I remember putting salt on my cereal thinking it was sugar, seeing cars driving with no tires on them, on their rims. My brothers, 2 older brothers and myself, we used to go scour the town for scrap metal and milkweed pods, which were used in life vests. And trains going by loaded with military equipment, and seeing servicemen everywhere. So those were very formative years that just kept with me even after the war. And I loved American history, military history, from 1776 to today, but which we all should learn. But it was after the war years, here came books by the thousands being written about the World War II. Movies, great movies. The Longest Day, the best years of our lives, which is just on a week ago, by the way. And my favorite, From Here to Eternity. But even after that, even my own military experience, I went in the Army in 1957 after I graduated from Ellsworth, and had a little World War II experience when I didn't meet him actually. I was in Arlington Cemetery. I was sent to the Pentagon on a special assignment as a private first class, believe it or not. And there's 9 of us in a special section called there specifically for a certain assignment. And I was blessed to be somehow called part of that group because I already had a top secret security clearance. But in Arlington Cemetery, I was there going on the way to work because I lived off base with my wife. And here came a funeral procession. And it was Eisenhower and Nixon getting out of their cars, and the funeral was for John Foster Dulles. So I turned and started towards the Pentagon. Here's a road, and I stepped in the road, and here came an Army staff car. So I backed up. The car could have run right over my toes, but he had the big red license plate with the stars on it. So I stood and saluted and looked down, and the guy in the back seat with a big smile, leaned down and gave me a return salute. It was General Maxwell D. Taylor, my idol. Little did I know his grandfather and my great-grandfather were brothers, which made my dad and him first cousins. If I would have known that when I saluted him, maybe I could have got a better job and faster promotions. But I don't know. But that was a little, he was my hero from World War II, and I got a lot of books on him and what he accomplished. There's some other coincidences related to that, but after I got out of the service, I finished college finally at Iowa, and became a federal criminal investigator with 2 different agencies. One of them was with NIS, which is Naval Investigative Service. The Navy hired civilian criminal investigators for their work, and as a result of that, I got to do some traveling around. And but they later changed their name to NCIS, which is a popular television series now. And after that, I left them to become a U.S. Postal Inspector, doing criminal investigations and audits. I was based in San Francisco, and as a result of that, I got to travel to the Pacific a lot. I was in Honolulu a lot of times, able to go to Pearl Harbor, and of course all the bases around there, and post offices, of course. But I was sent to Guam, and while there I visited Saipan. There were 2 famous battle sites during World War II. No relics were found on any of the places because I was always looking for that. But during one interview in Pearl Harbor, this guy gave me 2 Japanese bullets he found with a metal detector and a copy of the famous telegram, "Air raid in Pearl Harbor, this is no drill." I got a copy of that too. On the island of Saipan is loaded with artifacts, and but they're all piled in an area that is restricted because, as the sign said, "Do not enter." Explosions occur from time to time, and this is 30 years after the war, and they're still blowing up. So actually, and there's a $10,000 fine if you tried to take anything off the island. So I didn't want to do that. But I went to Europe on my own quite a few times, mainly to England to visit 8th Air Force bases that were there and the others that have been abandoned, because the 8th Air Force is based in England during World War II to bomb Nazi Germany. They had over 60 bases that they used, and 26,000 were killed in action, 28,000 were taken prisoner of war, and they mainly bombed industry, and so Germany couldn't rearm themselves, but they never attacked the electricity parts. But anyway, and then through Germany, clear all the way up to Hitler's Eagle's Nest. I kind of followed the way the Band of Brothers did from Utah Beach and Normandy all the way to Germany till the end of the war. But my main focus was going in Normandy, which I've been there many times, particularly Utah Beach and St. Mary Glees, which is featured in the movie The Longest Day. Burcourt Manor, where the Band of Brothers destroyed a bunch of artillery pieces at great cost. And then Omaha Beach. I was there 44 years ago, and I was able to go all over the cliffs and all over the beaches. Couldn't go into slit trenches because they were covered with sticky vines or some bushes. But I did manage to pick up a piece of a German military barbed wire near a slit trench, and tore a piece of burnt plywood off of a landing craft that was still buried in the sand there. But German machine gun places were all over the beach at that time. The last time I was there, I took my son, and things have changed. The one gorge where leading off of the base up to the little village of Vieirville is all a big parking lot now. There's a restaurant there, but they didn't go totally commercial. Each beach almost has its own museum. An American flag flies 24 hours a day in St. Mary Glees in particular, which is featured in the movie The Longest Day. Yeah, another thing, way that you get, even though artifacts and relics are long gone, if you've ever seen the movie or the television show Expedition Unknown with Josh Gates on the Discovery Channel, he is. They have found a lot of things with metal detectors, but through ground-penetrating radar, they've been able to uncover a lot of things from World War II and find relics inside. There's some bunkers that they found, cement bunkers that have been covered over with dirt and ground. So for the farmers, they uncovered them and they were able to find a lot of stuff inside the bunkers that had been kind of flooded. And you wouldn't want to even go inside because of the water. It was so terrible, but that had filtered down there. But stuff is still available that we don't know about, particularly a lot of caves and tunnels that the Germans had built. Then later I joined the Commemorative Air Force. The time I joined it was called the Confederate Air Force, but because of the times they changed the name to Commemorative Air Force, where we restored and flew World War II aircraft, mainly trainers, out of Ankeny. We had a museum in there. My son painted murals on the wall, and we had 2 guys killed at one of our planes at an air show that I had sponsored in Boone. And as a result, we attended air shows all over the United States, my son and wife, particularly in Minnesota, Wisconsin 3 years, Michigan, Reading, Pennsylvania, where I would encourage anybody to go see. But 3 years in a row, they have what you call a World War II weekend, and the whole city embraces it. They women dress in 1940s clothing. They have stage shows, banquets, dances. They have reenactors representing Germany, Japan, England, the United States. They stage battles in a little village they have at the airport. And inside the hangar, they empty that and make tables and chair places for guests. They've had so many famous people from World War II there, like several Band of Brothers guys, Tuskegee Airmen, and just all kinds of people from World War II. It's very interesting, and you can see a lot of artifacts there, and it's just a great time. But try and find a hotel within the city. You have to be about 25 miles or further out. Particularly, Confederate Air Force had their air shows down in Texas. Went there 4 years, I think, in a row. And people would bring artifacts from World War II, the World War II planes flying all over the place, and it was great air shows. Later, I joined the 8th Air Force Historical Society, which is made up mainly of 8th Air Force veterans, Air Force enthusiasts or buffs, just people who loved airplanes. But the year I joined, I went to their annual reunion that year and took a display, and as a result, they elected me to the board of directors. In 2 years, I was made president of the chapter for 1 year, which turned out to be over 20 years. What I did is able to call on the people, associates that I'd met, famous pilots that I met at all these air shows, and bring them to Iowa as special guests. I had fantastic entertainment and memorial services and displays and decorations. Each year, they just automatically made me president. Some of the people I brought in were, for example, was Gabby Gabreski. I don't know if you've heard of him. He was the leading ace in Europe in World War II. Some stories about him, but they take too long to tell them, but they're fantastic. And Tex Hill. Tex is a flying tiger. Does everybody know what a flying tiger is? There were Americans who fought went to China and fought the Japanese, basically in the air. And Tex is one of the most famous of them, other than his commander, Chenault. I did meet an Iowan who was a flying tiger. Several of them, and I got all their autographs and stuff, but I would bring a lot of these people in. Another one is Hank Potter, who was Jimmy Doolittle's navigator. on the raid on Tokyo. They made a movie of that called 30 Seconds Over Tokyo. And Hank Potter, all the planes, because they had to have an early takeoff, didn't make it to safety. A lot of guys were taken prisoner of war, executed. Tex escaped it. Hank escaped it, as well as Doolittle. But an Iowan was killed from Plymouth, Iowa, when he had to parachute out of his plane. They didn't have enough gas. He opened his parachute too soon, and it took him right back to the stabilizer that killed him. And I met his brother at one of our reunions, and it's really sad. But I have these reunions all over Iowa. I even had two of them in Iowa, and I had Joe Gomer as one guest one time. Does everybody know Joe? Oh boy, what a guy. He and I became very good friends. My son did a painting of one of his planes, and he invited us to air shows up in Minnesota. And along with Wayne Ziegler, we became very good friends, and I would talk to Joe a couple times a week. And one time he told me, hey, they're putting a statue of me up in the Duluth airport. That's where I lived at the time. I said, Joe, we need you in Iowa Falls. So I went and told my neighbor about it down in Montezuma. He ran a company that makes automobile parts. He gave me $10,000. Said he didn't know anything about World War II. He didn't know what a Tuskegee Airman was, but he gave me $10,000. And I raised the rest of the money with some help, and we got a sculptor in Loveland, Colorado, and they made the statue, and we had an unveiling on the college campus, and it was Skyped, is that the right word, to Joe up in Duluth. He couldn't come down because he was sick with his cancer and couldn't travel, but he sent some representatives on his behalf, and we televised basically the unveiling ceremony to him. So it was quite a thrill. I think over all this time, so many years I've been associated with people of the greatest generation, and when that term came out, I sat back and thought, my gosh, that's practically my whole life has been associated with people my parents' age, through all the military associations and the history that I love. And they suffered so much through the Great Depression, and when World War II started and we were hardly ready for a war, they joined together. Men went to war, women went to factory, the workplace. Rosie the Riveter, and everybody's united for a common cause. We won the war, and we became the greatest country in the world. But what are we now? Things seem to be falling apart. History repeats itself. The latest editorial in the paper regarding history repeating itself is so true. I'm afraid we got too many Hitlers out there, but I hope everybody appreciates the greatest generations and the terrible sacrifices they made for our country, because they are the greatest. And I hope we can finally teach some kids history. I remember one time going down to Casey's, and my bill was $17.76, and I looked at the young lady. She's probably a high school senior or better, older, and I asked her if she knew the significance of 1776, and she had no idea. Yeah, so I thought, well, the kids don't know what's going on, and sometimes they're being taught the wrong history. But through museums, and I've often wanted to do an Iowa Falls Veterans Museum, needing a space about 40 by 50, free, decorated, and I have information regarding we've been in 100 conflicts since 1776, believe it or not, and I have the information on all those. And I've been to so many museums in the world, particularly in England, the fabulous museums. And Duxford and the Imperial War Museum, and one at Hendon, which is just north of London. They're fabulous air museums. But if kids can be taught history, maybe they'd appreciate, have better understanding of the sacrifice that people have made for keep our freedoms, keep us free. Thank you very much, I think.